The night sky was heavy with clouds when Aisha left the office that evening. It had been a long day, the kind that left her shoulders stiff and her mind numb. She wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck, wishing she had left earlier before the rain began. The roads were quiet, only the sound of raindrops hitting the windshield keeping her company. Street lights glowed through the mist and everything looked a little softer, a little lonelier. She drove slowly, lost in her thoughts. Her life had become a routine she no longer questioned. Work, home, sleep, repeat. There was comfort in it, but also a quiet emptiness that she didn't like to think about. She had friends, but most were busy with their own families. Her parents lived in another city and phone calls had replaced visits. Sometimes she wondered if this was what growing older really meant. Watching life settle into predictable lines, waiting for something unexpected to happen. That night, something did. As she turned a corner near the old bridge, her headlights caught a shape by the roadside. At first she thought it was an animal, but then she saw a man standing next to a car with its hood open. The rain was falling harder now, and he looked soaked through, trying to wave down a passing car. No one stopped. Aisha slowed down, her hands tightening on the steering wheel. She could drive on. After all, it wasn't safe to stop for strangers at night, but something in her chest told her to pull over. She rolled down her window slightly and called out, "Are you okay?" The man turned, startled but relieved. "My car broke down. I've been trying to get someone to stop, but no luck." His voice was calm but tired, like someone who had been standing there for a while. Aisha hesitated for a second, then parked her car a few meters ahead. She grabbed her umbrella and stepped out, the cold air biting at her cheeks. The man looked about her age, maybe a little older, wearing a light jacket that was now soaked. His car, a small worn sedan, looked like it had seen better days. "I don't know much about cars," she said, holding the umbrella over them both. "But maybe I can help somehow." He smiled faintly. "Thank you. I've been trying to call for a tow truck, but my phone battery just died. I was starting to think I'd be stuck here all night." She handed him her phone. "Here, you can use mine." He looked surprised. "Are you sure? You don't even know me." "It's fine," she said simply. "Just make your call." As he dialed, she studied his face under the dim streetlight. He looked exhausted, not in a dangerous way, but in the kind of way people do when life has been a little too hard for a little too long. His voice was soft when he spoke to the tow service, polite even though it was clear he was frustrated. When he hung up, he handed her the phone carefully. "They said someone will be here in about 40 minutes. That's a long wait in the rain," she said. "You can sit in my car if you want. It's warmer." He looked hesitant, and she added quickly, "I'll keep the doors unlocked. You can sit in the passenger seat. I just don't think standing here makes sense." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. You really don't have to do all this." "I know," she said, smiling, "but it feels like the right thing to do." They sat in her car, the sound of rain filling the silence. She turned on the heater, and soon the windows fogged up. For a few minutes, neither spoke. The moment felt oddly peaceful. Finally, he said, "I'm on my way to a friend's place. I lost my job 2 weeks ago, and I'm trying to start fresh somewhere new. Guess life decided to test me one more time." "I'm sorry," she said softly. "That must be hard," he shrugged. "It is, but I guess I needed a change. Sometimes life pushes us when we don't have the courage to move ourselves." She looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his words. There was no self-pity, just quiet acceptance. It reminded her of how she often felt, stuck between comfort and the desire for something more. "Do you really believe that?" she asked. "That life pushes us for a reason?" He smiled faintly. "I try to. Otherwise, it's too easy to give up." They talked more after that, about work, about small things, about how people sometimes forget to notice kindness in everyday life. His name was Daniel, and though she barely knew him, his openness felt strangely comforting. It had been a long time since she had spoken to someone who didn't rush the conversation, who listened like her words actually mattered. The tow truck finally arrived. As the driver began hooking up Daniel's car, Aisha stood beside him under her umbrella. "Where will they take you?" she asked. "To a small workshop nearby. I'll wait there until morning," he said. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" He shook his head. "I'll figure something out." "I'll be fine." She hesitated, then said, "There's a small guest house near the bus station. It's not fancy, but it's safe and cheap. I can drop you off there if you want." He looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "You've already done so much. I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," she said, and she meant it. Helping him felt right, like something she was supposed to do. They drove through the quiet streets, the city lights reflecting on the wet roads. The conversation continued, gentle and unforced. When they reached the guest house, Daniel thanked her again, his voice low but sincere. "You have no idea how much this means to me," he said. "I was starting to think no one cared anymore." Aisha smiled. "Sometimes people just need a reminder to care." He nodded, holding her gaze for a second longer. "Can I have your number?" "Just to let you know I got everything sorted." She hesitated only for a moment, then nodded. "Sure, but promise me you'll get some rest first." "I promise." As he walked away, she watched him disappear into the dimly lit entrance of the guest house. The rain had eased to a drizzle, and the air smelled of wet earth. When she finally drove away, she felt something she hadn't in a long time, a quiet sense of purpose. It wasn't about saving someone. It was about connection, a small act that had somehow made her world feel a little less cold. That night she couldn't sleep easily. Her mind kept returning to the stranger on the roadside, to his calm voice and tired smile. She wondered what it must feel like to start over from nothing, to trust that somehow things would work out. A part of her admired his courage. Another part felt afraid, because she realized how little courage she herself had shown lately. The next morning, the world looked brighter. The rain had washed away the dust and sunlight filtered through the curtains of her small apartment. She made her coffee slowly, thinking about her life again. Maybe she had been too comfortable, too afraid to step out of her quiet circle. She had always waited for something to change, but maybe, like Daniel said, life only changes when you do. Her phone buzzed just as she sat down. It was a message from an unknown number. "Good morning. It's Daniel. Just wanted to say thank you again. The car's being fixed and I got a room for a few days. I'll pay you back for the call when we meet again." She smiled at the message, though she didn't expect to see him again. Still, it was nice to know he was safe. She typed back, "No need to pay me back. Just promise to help someone else when they need it." He replied almost instantly, "Deal. You helped me more than you know." For a moment she stared at the screen, a soft warmth spreading through her. She didn't know why that message meant so much, but it did. Maybe because it reminded her that kindness still mattered in a world that often felt rushed and indifferent. As she got ready for work, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked different, more alive somehow. That night on the roadside hadn't just helped a stranger. It had awakened something in her. A reminder that connection wasn't lost, that even one small act could ripple far beyond what she could see. She didn't know it yet, but that chance meeting was only the beginning. The stranger she had helped would soon return to her life in ways she could never have predicted. And when he did, everything, her purpose, her choices, even her understanding of love, would quietly begin to change. A week passed since the rainy night when Aisha had helped the stranger by the bridge. Life returned to its quiet rhythm, work, home, and long evenings spent alone in her small apartment. But even in that calm routine, she often found herself thinking about the man she had met. She didn't know why his face kept appearing in her thoughts or why his simple words about courage and change stayed with her. Maybe because it had been so long since anyone had spoken to her with such honesty. One evening, while she was making tea, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but something in her gut told her who it might be. She opened the message. "Hi, this is Daniel. Just wanted to say my car's fixed now. Also found a small job nearby. I wanted to thank you again if you have time for coffee someday." She stared at the message for a while before replying. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she tried to decide if meeting him again was a good idea. After all, he was still a stranger, but there was something sincere about his words, something that made her smile. "Sure," she finally typed. "I know a small cafe near the park. Tomorrow evening?" He replied almost instantly. "Perfect. See you then." The next evening she reached the cafe early. It was a cozy little place with warm lights and the smell of roasted coffee beans hanging in the air. She chose a corner table near the window and waited. She was nervous, though she didn't know why. It wasn't a date. It was just coffee. But her heart beat faster than usual. A few minutes later, she saw him walk in. He looked a little different, less tired, more settled. His jacket was clean, his expression calm but warm. When he spotted her, his face lit up with a genuine smile. "I didn't think you'd actually come," he said, sitting down across from her. "I didn't think I would either," she admitted with a small laugh. "But here I am." They ordered coffee and talked, first about simple things, the weather, work, and how strange the city could feel when you didn't know anyone. Then the conversation drifted into deeper topics, almost naturally. He told her how he had worked in sales for years, how he had lost his job when the company downsized, and how he had been trying to find a new path ever since. "It was a shock at first," he said quietly. "You think you're doing everything right, and suddenly life pulls the floor from under you." She nodded slowly. "I know that feeling. Maybe not the same way, but I understand what it's like when life changes and you can't control it." He looked at her curiously. "Something happened to you?" She hesitated. "Nothing dramatic, just, I guess I stopped living for myself. I got used to the safe side of life, steady job, quiet days, no surprises. I used to dream about doing something meaningful, something that helped people, but dreams fade when you don't feed them." He listened without interrupting, and that made her feel safe to continue. "Sometimes I look around and wonder if this is all there is. Work, bills, and empty evenings. And then I feel guilty, because it's not like my life is bad. It's just missing something," he smiled gently. "Maybe it's not missing something. Maybe it's waiting for something." The words made her pause. She looked at him and saw no judgment in his eyes, only quiet understanding. In that moment, she realized that they were both searching for something they couldn't quite name. After coffee, they walked outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky with soft orange light. The park nearby was almost empty, the air cool and peaceful. They walked in silence for a while before he said, "You know, that night when you stopped to help me, I was ready to give up. I didn't even know where I'd sleep. I felt like I had no reason to trust people anymore. But you changed that. You reminded me that kindness still exists." Aisha looked at him, her heart softening. "It was just a small thing." "Not to me," he said quietly. "It made me believe in trying again." They walked until the streetlights came on, and when they finally said goodbye, it didn't feel like the end of something. It felt like the beginning. Over the next few weeks, they started meeting more often. Sometimes for coffee, sometimes for long walks by the river. Their conversations flowed easily. They talked about dreams they had left behind, about what happiness really meant, about small moments that shaped who they were. Aisha found herself smiling more often, laughing without forcing it. One day he called her unexpectedly and said, "I need your advice on something." "What kind of advice?" she asked. "Just come and see," he said with a hint of excitement. Curious, she met him near an old community center on the edge of town. The building looked worn out, its paint faded, windows dusty. But inside, children's voices echoed, running, laughing, playing. A few volunteers were helping organize donated books and supplies. "I started volunteering here," he said with a proud smile. "They help kids who dropped out of school. It's not much, but it feels right. I thought you might like to see it." She looked around, amazed. The children greeted him warmly, calling his name with smiles. He waved back, his eyes full of warmth. "This is wonderful," she said softly. "You're making a difference," he shrugged modestly. "Maybe, but I realize something. You don't need a perfect life to help others. You just need to care enough to start." The words touched her deeply. For days after that, she couldn't stop thinking about what he said. She began visiting the center too, helping out on weekends. At first, she wasn't sure what she could offer, but soon she found herself reading stories to the children, helping them with small art projects, and laughing more than she had in years. The more time she spent there, the lighter her heart felt. She started noticing small joys she had forgotten, the sound of children's laughter, the warmth of shared meals, the beauty of doing something that mattered. One evening, after everyone had left the center, she and Daniel sat on the steps outside, watching the sky turn dark. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been if I hadn't stopped that night?" she asked. He nodded. "All the time. It's strange how one moment can change everything. I used to believe life was just about survival. But now I see it's about connection. You never know who you might meet or how one act of kindness can start a chain reaction." She smiled faintly. "You've changed a lot since that night." "So have you," he said, looking at her. "You used to sound like someone who was waiting for life to begin. Now you're living it." His words warmed her heart. She didn't know what their friendship meant exactly, but she knew it mattered deeply. He had become someone she could talk to without fear of judgment, someone who made her believe in herself again. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. They celebrated small victories together, like when one of the kids at the center passed an exam, or when they managed to collect enough donations to buy new books. They began to dream bigger, talking about creating a small project to help families in need. But beneath all the laughter and teamwork, there was something else growing quietly, something neither of them dared to name. It was the feeling of finding someone who saw you for who you were, someone whose presence brought calm instead of noise. Late one night, after leaving the center, Aisha sat in her car and thought about it all. She realized how much her life had changed since the day she stopped by the bridge. She felt alive again, connected, hopeful, full of purpose. And though she didn't know where this new path would lead, she was no longer afraid of the unknown. Before going to bed that night, she got a message from Daniel. "Thank you for today. Couldn't have done any of this without you." She smiled as she typed back. "You'd have done it anyway. You just needed someone to remind you that you could." He replied, "Then I'm lucky it was you." Her heart skipped for a moment as she read those words. She didn't know what to make of the feeling rising inside her. But it was warm and real. That night, as she turned off the lights, she whispered a quiet thank you to the universe for the rainy night, the broken car, and the stranger who had somehow become the most important part of her world. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. Sometimes helping a stranger doesn't just change their life. It changes yours too in ways you could never plan or predict. And as she drifted off to sleep, her heart felt full for the first time in years. Weeks passed, and Aisha's life had begun to feel different in ways she hadn't expected. The small routine of work, home, and quiet evenings was now filled with subtle energy she hadn't felt for years. Every time she met Daniel at the community center, she felt more alive, more aware of the little things that made life meaningful. Their friendship had grown naturally, built on trust and shared purpose, and each conversation seemed to bring them closer together without them even noticing it. One Saturday morning, Daniel called her with a sense of urgency in his voice. "Can you come to the center today? I think we can finally start something bigger." "What is it?" she asked, intrigued. "I don't want to spoil it over the phone. Just come." When she arrived, she found him standing outside, holding a few folders and notes. His expression was excited but focused. "I've been thinking a lot about how we can make a real difference," he said. "Helping kids is important, but I think we can also help their families. Many of them struggle with jobs, food, or even just basic guidance. If we could find a way to support them too, it might change their whole lives." Aisha's eyes lit up. "You mean like a program or community project?" "Yes, something small at first, but meaningful. I thought we could start by finding people who want to work but don't know how to get started. We could help them with job training, small workshops, maybe even connect them with local businesses." The idea made her heart race. For years, she had wanted to do something meaningful, something that mattered beyond herself. But life had always been too busy, too complicated. Now, standing there with Daniel, she realized that possibility was finally within reach. Over the next few weeks, they began planning. They made lists, contacted local businesses, and reached out to families they had met at the center. It wasn't easy. Many people were skeptical, resources were limited, and the work felt overwhelming at times. But every small success made them more determined. One day, while they were preparing for a small workshop, Aisha noticed a woman struggling to carry a box of supplies. Without thinking, she rushed over to help. "Here, let me help you with that," she said. The woman smiled, a mix of relief and gratitude. "Thank you. It's been a long day." Aisha realized in that moment how much she had changed. Not long ago, she would have walked past, too focused on her own concerns. Now she felt connected to the people around her in a way she hadn't thought possible. Daniel noticed too and gave her a small smile, as if acknowledging the shift quietly between them. The first workshop was a mix of nerves and excitement. They had invited a handful of families to learn basic job skills like resume writing, interview preparation, and small trades like sewing or simple carpentry. It wasn't perfect. Some participants arrived late, some left early, and there were moments of confusion. But Aisha watched as parents laughed, asked questions, and shared stories of their struggles. She felt a deep sense of purpose, the kind that makes exhaustion feel worthwhile. Daniel stood beside her, guiding people patiently and sharing his own experiences. "It's okay if it feels messy at first," he said. "This is real life. Change isn't clean or simple. It's small steps every day." Aisha nodded. She realized he was right. It wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence, about showing up when it mattered most. After the workshop, they sat together on a bench outside, tired but content. "You know," Daniel said, "this is only the beginning. If we keep going, we could really make a difference for these families. Even if it's small, it's meaningful." Aisha looked at him, feeling a mix of admiration and something she didn't want to name. "I never thought I'd feel like this," she admitted. "Like my life actually matters beyond me." He smiled softly. "I know what you mean. I feel the same way. You've made me believe that it's possible to start over, to do something that truly matters." The connection between them deepened in quiet, unspoken ways. They laughed together, encouraged each other, and slowly began to trust their hearts as much as their minds. Sometimes they didn't even need words. A glance, a shared smile, a small act of understanding was enough to remind them that they were not alone in this journey. One evening, after a long day at the center, Daniel suggested they take a walk along the river nearby. The city lights reflected on the water, and the cool breeze carried the faint scent of rain from the previous night. "I've been thinking," he said, "about how lucky we are, not just because of what we're doing here, but because we found each other in this crazy, ordinary world." Aisha laughed softly, shaking her head. "You make it sound like a storybook. Life isn't usually this meaningful. But it can be," he said, looking at her seriously. "Sometimes you just need one moment, one decision to change everything. That night you stopped for me. It wasn't just my life that changed. I think it changed yours too." She looked at him, feeling a warmth she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "I guess you're right," she admitted. "I never realized how much I needed that moment. It reminded me that life isn't just about surviving. It's about connecting, helping, and being part of something bigger than yourself." Their hands brushed accidentally as they walked, and for a moment neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable, like they had both recognized something they didn't need to name yet. The weeks turned into months, and their project grew slowly. More families joined, more volunteers offered help, and even a few small local businesses contributed supplies and guidance. Aisha discovered talents and strengths in herself she hadn't known existed: patience, creativity, and the ability to inspire others. And Daniel, she realized, had become more than just a friend. He was someone she could rely on, someone who brought out the best in her without ever asking. One evening, while they were organizing a small fundraiser, a woman approached Aisha. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her eyes glistening. "You and your friend have given me hope. I was afraid I'd never find work again, but now I feel like I can try. I can do this for my children." Aisha's throat tightened. "You can. You're stronger than you think." The woman smiled, clutching a small folder of papers with renewed determination. As she walked away, Aisha felt a surge of emotion: pride, gratitude, and an overwhelming sense that this was exactly where she was meant to be. Later, she found Daniel standing by the door, watching her. "You're doing great," he said quietly. "So are you," she replied. They smiled at each other, a shared understanding passing between them. It wasn't romance yet, not fully, but it was the kind of closeness that built slowly, like roots growing deep underground, unseen but strong. One rainy afternoon, after a particularly challenging day at the center, Aisha sat with Daniel, exhausted. "I never thought helping someone could change so much," she said. "I thought it would just be one small thing, a moment, and that would be it. But it's like it opened a door I didn't even know existed." Daniel nodded. "Kindness has that power. And so does connection. When we help each other, even in small ways, life becomes bigger than we imagined." She looked at him, feeling a quiet gratitude that went beyond words. That rainy night, the broken car, the small act of stopping. She realized now that it had started a chain of events that neither of them could have planned. Life had a way of surprising people, sometimes in the most ordinary moments. Months passed, and the bond between them continued to grow. They spent long evenings planning, laughing, and reflecting. They celebrated small victories, like a family finding steady work or a child passing an important test. And through it all, they discovered something deeper about themselves: courage, patience, and the quiet joy of making a difference. One evening, as they walked back from the center, Daniel turned to her. I think the world feels different now. Not because things are perfect, but because we're part of something real, and because we found each other, even in the most unexpected way." Aisha smiled. "I feel it too. I never imagined my life could feel this full, this alive. All it took was one small decision, one night where I chose to help someone." They walked in silence for a moment, feeling the connection between them grow, a quiet understanding that whatever came next, they would face it together. And as they reached the steps of her apartment, Aisha realized that her life had shifted completely. She had found purpose, friendship, and the beginnings of something she couldn't yet name, but she knew it was real. And it all started with one rainy night, one stranger, and one simple act of kindness. The weeks turned into months, and Aisha noticed how much her life had changed since that rainy night. What had begun as a small act of kindness had grown into something much bigger. Every visit to the community center, every conversation with families, and every workshop had taught her something new about herself, about hope, and about the small power of showing up for others. But the change wasn't only in her, it was in Daniel too. He had become more confident, grounded, and filled with a quiet purpose that Aisha had never seen before. One afternoon, they were setting up a small workshop for local families when Daniel paused and looked around. "It's amazing, isn't it?" he said softly. "To think that a few months ago we were just two strangers meeting by chance, and now, look at all of this." Aisha smiled, surveying the room filled with families, volunteers, and children laughing as they worked on small projects. "It really is amazing," she admitted. "I didn't know life could feel like this, so full and alive." He nodded. "I think it's because we finally started living for something beyond ourselves. We stopped thinking just about our problems and started thinking about others. That's when life opens up." Aisha's chest warmed at his words. She realized he was right. Helping Daniel that night hadn't just changed his life. It had changed hers. She had found purpose, joy, and a connection that she had never expected. That evening, after everyone had left the center, they stayed behind to clean up and organize supplies for the next day. The quiet of the empty room felt peaceful, a gentle contrast to the laughter and noise from earlier. "You know," Aisha said, stacking some books on a shelf, "I used to think my life was fine the way it was. Routine, predictable, safe. But now I see how much I was missing. There's so much more to life than just going through the motions." Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. "I felt the same. I used to focus only on surviving, on keeping myself afloat. I never imagined I could help others, let alone feel this kind of fulfillment." She glanced at him, noticing how calm and content he seemed. "You've changed a lot too," she said softly. He smiled. "Maybe we've changed each other without even realizing it." From that night on, Aisha and Daniel became inseparable in their mission. They planned more workshops, reached out to more families, and even managed to get a small donation from a local store to provide supplies for children. Each small success fueled their motivation, and with every challenge they found ways to support each other. One evening, after a particularly long day, Daniel suggested they take a walk outside. The streets were quiet, and the city lights reflected on puddles from an earlier rain. They walked side by side, comfortable in the silence, before Daniel spoke. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," he said. "Someone who sees people the way you do, who cares without expecting anything in return. It makes me want to be better, to do more." Aisha's heart skipped a beat. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "I feel the same about you," she admitted quietly. "You make me want to be braver, to try things I never would have tried on my own." They walked in silence for a few more minutes, letting the words sink in. It was a simple moment, but it carried weight, a quiet acknowledgement that their bond had grown into something deeper than friendship. As the weeks continued, their project expanded. They began offering evening classes for adults who wanted to learn new skills, helping them prepare for better jobs and more stable lives. Aisha discovered a talent for teaching, her patience and kindness making her a natural mentor. Daniel guided people with gentle encouragement, sharing his own experiences to inspire confidence. Together, they formed a team that felt unstoppable, driven not by ambition but by a shared desire to make a difference. One day, as they were organizing a small celebration for families who had found new jobs, a woman approached Aisha with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "You and your friend have changed my life. I didn't know I could ever have hope again, but now I can see a future for my children." Aisha felt a lump in her throat. "You did all the hard work," she said softly. "We just helped you see what was already inside you." The woman smiled, clutching a small gift she had brought. "I wanted to give you something to show my gratitude," she said. Aisha accepted it, feeling a quiet happiness. Moments like these reminded her why she had started this journey. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about connection, hope, and the knowledge that even small actions could ripple far beyond what anyone could see. Later that evening, Daniel and Aisha sat on the steps outside the center, exhausted but content. The sky had turned dark and the cool evening air carried the faint scent of rain. "Do you ever think about that night?" Daniel asked suddenly. "The night we met by the bridge?" Aisha nodded. "All the time. It feels like a lifetime ago, but also like it happened yesterday. That one decision to stop and help changed everything." He smiled, looking at her with a quiet intensity. "It changed me too. I don't think I'd be here doing any of this without you. You reminded me that kindness matters, that people matter." Aisha felt a rush of emotion. "And you reminded me that life can be more than just routine. You showed me how to take chances, how to believe in people, and in myself." For a moment, they sat in silence, letting the words sink in. It wasn't about grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It was about the quiet truth between them. They had changed each other's lives, and that change was profound, steady, and real. As the months went on, their bond grew stronger. They laughed together, celebrated successes, and comforted each other during setbacks. The community they were building thrived, not because of money or fame, but because of trust, care, and the belief that every small act could make a difference. One rainy afternoon, while they were delivering supplies to a family in need, Aisha looked at Daniel and realized how far they had come. The man she had met that night on the roadside, wet and exhausted, was now confident, full of purpose, and deeply connected to the people around him. And she, who had once felt trapped in routine, now felt alive, courageous, and open to life in ways she never imagined. "Look at us," she said quietly as they walked back home, carrying boxes together. "From strangers on a rainy night to this." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand briefly. "From strangers to partners in making a difference. I wouldn't trade it for anything." Aisha felt a warmth spread through her chest. She realized that helping Daniel that night had not only changed his life, it had changed hers completely. She had discovered strength, purpose, and a quiet kind of love that didn't need to be named yet, but existed anyway. That evening, as they organized supplies for the next day, Daniel looked at her seriously. "You know, I think the world feels brighter now. Not because everything is perfect, but because we're doing something real, and because we found each other even in the most unexpected way." Aisha smiled softly. "I feel it too. I never imagined my life could feel this full, this alive. All it took was one small decision, one night where I chose to help someone. And in that moment, she knew it was true. Life could surprise you in ways you could never plan. One act of kindness had started a chain of events that had grown into something much bigger than either of them could have imagined." Their lives were intertwined now, not just through friendship, but through shared purpose, hope, and a quiet, growing love that neither had expected but both cherished deeply. And as they looked at the night sky, the city lights reflecting on the wet streets, they understood that their journey was far from over. Together they could continue to help, to inspire, and to change lives, starting with the lives of those around them and quietly, endlessly, each other's. Years had passed since that rainy night when Aisha first stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. What had begun as a small, almost instinctive act of kindness had grown into a life she could never have imagined for herself. The community center was now a thriving hub where families, children, and volunteers gathered regularly. The laughter and chatter of children filled the rooms. The smell of freshly baked bread and coffee lingered in the air, and hope was a constant presence in the lives of those who came through the doors. Aisha stood near the entrance that morning, looking around. She remembered the first time she had walked into this place with Daniel, unsure of what they could do, unsure if their efforts would make any difference. And now, years later, the room was bustling with people, some who had come seeking help, others who had come to give it. She felt a quiet pride settle over her. Daniel approached her with a folder in his hands and a bright smile on his face. "Morning," he said. "We've got a lot to do today. The program for job training starts in an hour, and we still need to set up the supplies." Aisha laughed softly. "I feel like I've said that to you 100 times before. And yet here we are still working as if the first day was yesterday." "That's because it's never really the same," he replied. "Every day brings something new. Every life we touch is different," she nodded. "You're right. And that's what makes it worth it." As they began preparing the room, Aisha's thoughts wandered back to that night when everything began. The rain, the broken car, the exhaustion she had felt, and the decision to stop. What seemed like a simple act had completely changed her life. She had no idea that helping a stranger could lead to such deep connections, purpose, and joy. And Daniel, once weary and unsure, had become not only her partner in this work but also a constant source of inspiration and support. When the first families arrived for the training, Aisha greeted them warmly. She helped children settle into small activity corners while explaining the day's schedule to their parents. She noticed the tired but hopeful faces, the anxiety mixed with determination, and she felt the familiar tug of empathy and care. Each person she helped reminded her why she had started this journey, and why it had become such an essential part of her life. The morning passed quickly, filled with stories, laughter, and moments of quiet achievement. A father learned how to fill out a job application for the first time, a mother discovered her talent for sewing, and children excitedly shared the crafts they had created. Aisha moved from one group to another, offering guidance, encouragement, and a gentle smile to anyone who needed it. Daniel worked beside her, patient and kind, providing support wherever it was needed most. During a short break, Daniel sat next to her with 2 cups of coffee. "Do you remember the first day we did something like this?" he asked, a nostalgic tone in his voice. Aisha smiled, taking a sip. "I do. I was so nervous, worried that no one would listen or that it wouldn't make a difference. I had no idea what I was doing. And now look at us," he said, glancing around at the busy room. "We've grown, and so have the people we help. You've grown too. You're not just helping others, you're changing lives. You've changed mine, Aisha." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. She wanted to reply to tell him the same, that he had changed her life too. But she stayed quiet, letting the moment linger. Sometimes words weren't necessary. The understanding between them was already complete. As the day continued, Aisha noticed a young woman sitting quietly in a corner. She seemed nervous, hesitant to join the group. Aisha approached her gently. "Hi, I'm Aisha. Would you like to join us?" "You can learn at your own pace." The woman looked up, eyes filled with uncertainty. I don't know. I've never done anything like this before. I'm not sure I can." Aisha smiled warmly. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. Everyone here started somewhere, and we all support each other." Slowly, the woman nodded and joined a small group learning basic computer skills. Aisha stayed nearby, offering encouragement and guidance when needed. By the end of the session, the woman's nervous expression had softened into a small, proud smile. Aisha felt a surge of satisfaction, knowing she had made a difference even if only a small one. After the training ended, families began leaving, thanking Aisha and Daniel for their help. The sense of accomplishment was palpable. The center, once a quiet and modest space, had transformed into a place of hope, learning, and opportunity. Each person who walked through its doors carried a piece of that hope back into their lives. That evening, Aisha and Daniel stayed behind to clean up and prepare for the next day. The room was quiet now, empty except for the volunteers helping them. They moved side by side, their work effortless as if they had done this together for years. "You know," Daniel said quietly, "sometimes I still think about that night when we first met, how different things could have been if you hadn't stopped. I'd probably still be wandering, unsure of what to do." Aisha looked at him, a soft smile on her face. "And I'd still be stuck in my routine, feeling like something was missing." That night changed both of us. I never expected it, but I'm grateful. He reached out, briefly taking her hand in his. "I think it was more than just chance. Some things are meant to happen, even if we don't understand why at the time. Her chest warmed at the touch, and she felt a quiet certainty settle in her heart. They had been strangers once, two people crossing paths by coincidence, but now their lives were intertwined in ways neither could have imagined. Their bond was built not just on friendship, but on shared purpose, trust, and the countless small moments that had brought them closer. As the evening grew darker, Aisha walked home slowly, reflecting on everything that had happened. She realized how much she had grown, how much courage she had found within herself, and how much joy she had discovered in helping others. Her life, once predictable and quiet, was now full of purpose and connection. She thought about the families they had helped, the children who had learned to read and write, the adults who had found new jobs, and the countless small victories that had added up over time. She realized that life was not about grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was about the everyday choices to care, to support, and to be present for others. That night, Aisha received a message from Daniel. "Thank you for today. We did something meaningful. I'm proud of us." She smiled as she read it, typing back quickly. "We make a great team. Couldn't have done it without you," he replied almost immediately. "We make more than a team. We make a difference, and we make each other better." Her heart swelled at his words. She realized that what they had built together went beyond the community center or the projects they ran. It was a bond that had been forged through compassion, shared challenges, and mutual growth. It was the kind of connection that could withstand time, distance, and the uncertainties of life. Over the following months, their work continued to flourish. More volunteers joined, more families found support, and the center became a recognized hub for hope and opportunity in the community. Aisha discovered a confidence she had never known, and Daniel's optimism and patience inspired everyone around him. Together, they had created something lasting, something meaningful, something that began with one simple act of kindness. One evening, as they sat on the steps outside the center, watching the sunset, Daniel turned to her with a gentle seriousness. "Do you ever think about how far we've come? From that night on the roadside to everything we've built together?" Aisha nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "I do. And I never imagined life could feel this full. You've changed my world, Daniel, just like I hope I've changed yours." He smiled, taking her hand again. "You have. More than you know. And I hope we continue to change it together for many more years." Aisha felt a warmth she couldn't describe, a mix of gratitude, love, and quiet happiness. She realized that life was unpredictable, full of unexpected moments that could change everything if she had the courage to act. One rainy night, one small decision, had set off a chain of events that had transformed her world completely. And as she looked at Daniel, standing beside her, she understood that sometimes helping a stranger didn't just change their life, it changed yours forever. That night, as she lay in bed, Aisha reflected on the journey she had been on. She remembered the fear and hesitation she had felt that first night, the quiet hope she had discovered in Daniel, and the countless moments of connection and joy that had followed. She realized that life was not about waiting for miracles, but about creating them through small acts of kindness, courage, and compassion. Her heart was full, and she knew that the best was still yet to come. The stranger she had helped years ago had changed her world forever, but in helping him, she had also discovered her own strength, purpose, and the power of human connection. And as sleep came, she whispered a quiet thank you, not just for Daniel, not just for the community they had built, but for the life that had opened up before her, rich with meaning, hope, and endless possibilities.